As part of our Mind-Body Connection series, I wanted to look at one of many doubt arguments that has been brought my way on numerous occasions, both to show you how I counter it and also to show the general structure of how to attack a doubt. Today, I'll be tackling the doubt that even when you get better, you're really just distracting yourself from the symptom. Not true, and I will tell you why. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally. In addition, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars, join my weekly group membership meetings, or purchase any of my mind-body guides, also known as the PDFs, at www.crushingdoubt.org. Now, without further ado, let's look at why getting better has nothing to do with distraction. This topic comes straight to you from the membership groups, where we talk about moment-to-moment experience to understand each person's 3 columns and how they're operating. The question was raised, one that I had come up with myself and heard a number of times before. What if, when we get better, in quotes, we are really just finding a way to distract ourselves from the symptoms so effectively that we don't notice them anymore? First, let me note that the phrase "what if" is already a tip-off to being a doubt, rather than a likely valid concern. But it is a plausible, potentially logical argument, even if it happens to be wrong. Remember, doubt always wants to hide in a damn good argument, and this one has some big advantages. Chief among them is the fact that it seems hard to prove either way. If you're familiar with Schrodinger's cat, it's a bit like that, where 2 possibilities can remain endlessly true as long as truth isn't discovered. The good news is, there is truth to be discovered. As with any doubt, I use my 2 theories technique to line them up next to each other and begin to consider which one is more likely to be true. Let me give one of my usual reminders about Occam's razor, the philosophical proposition that the more assumptions you need to make for a theory to be true, the less likely it is to be true. This is because assumptions are making a leap of faith of sorts, since they cannot rest on verifiable proof. Anytime this happens, the theory is already in trouble. Now, what are our 2 theories here? One is that you've gotten your symptoms better, but you're really just playing a trick on your mind by distracting it. The second is that you have altered your mind-body experience in such a way that the actual physiology that causes the symptom is changed, making the symptom actually go away. All right, let's dig in. Let's begin with the first theory, that getting better is really just a grand distraction. There are many strikes against this theory, actually, but let's just start with the assumptions. One is that distraction could be so powerful as to render a true mind-body physiological issue completely inert and stay that way for long periods of time. Remember, distraction is used to generate symptoms to keep emotions at bay in the unconscious when they are too disturbing. But this distraction has a distinct function. What is the function of this new distraction? Well, it seems remarkably lucky to be that adaptive and so easily. Meanwhile, there is an assumption being made that changed mind-body thinking isn't really responsible for an actual change. But why? There are no coherent answers to be had here. Doubt is notoriously lazy, as I see it. Here, it wants us to just assume that distraction can be used anytime for any purpose just as well. But what is the purpose here? The assumption is simply, well, there is one, I guess. Here's another assumption. We are so out of touch with our bodies that we don't even feel something that is there anymore just because our belief system has changed. And even more preposterous, we suddenly got out of touch with our bodies in this new way right when a good mind-body treatment cured us of the symptoms. Curious timing for a new invention with no obvious function. And another. In our physical lives, we always feel what is going on in our physiology when it is significant enough, but now, mysteriously, we are not feeling it. When did the laws of the universe change for this new doubt to be right? When something happens in the body that can be felt, you feel it right away. Or how about this assumption, that this mysterious process could be explained well, but just so happens to have not been yet? Well, as I often do with doubt, I say, go for it. Try to explain it. I don't think you'll be able to. Just like I think all of the structuralists should have to make their case for what they say, as opposed to us always making the case for our theory, let's let doubt do some work. It's assuming we won't challenge it. At the very least, I hope we can say there are lots of questions about this seemingly neat theory. Again, it's an understandable one to consider, but it falls apart very quickly when you look at it. How about looking at the logic? If distraction works that well, then the mind-body process is controlling the whole thing in the first place, so this becomes a circular argument. The mind-body process is so dominant in this model, but then it chooses to completely reverse its course, but not in the obvious way of undoing what it was doing, but in now doing something totally new. Think about it. If we believe in the mind-body process at all, then we know there is a function happening that keeps it going. When we remove this function, things change. That's logical. But in this doubt example, we remove the function and things change, but somehow we want to argue the circuitous idea that even though all looks and smells like real change, it isn't? And again, for no reason? The real question at hand is, does the mind-body process actually change physiology or not? If we sign on to the idea that it leads to real physiological change in the first place, it becomes downright weird for us to argue that our experience in that same mind-body are now not accompanied by real change. We're reversing the rules midstream without any explanation. Uh-oh. Doubt is headed underwater. Let's just think about the natural flow of thinking. The fact is, it is much easier to doubt than to be certain. We always start from a position of not knowing something. We never begin with full knowledge. This makes it patently obvious that we should not be able to be certain enough of anything right after recovery, particularly when we had so many doubts getting there, to allow for a distraction that is powerful enough to stay right where it is all the time with complete belief. The gradual recovery from mind-body issues with doubt fits with how we learn, whereas the sudden and complete distraction posed here does not fit with anything we know about how we learn. Not only that, but the certainty of the distraction is apparently impervious to any doubt at all, since the argument presupposes that belief is what can cause the distraction in the first place, and now that belief is suddenly and instantly very strong, given that the distraction now stays in place, according to this theory. Another piece of logic we can use is how this doesn't fit with what we know of unconscious experience. Because the unconscious knows all, in this doubt, we find that the unconscious mind is aware of the supposed reality that the body is having a real physiological problem, even if a mind-body one, but lets us believe that we are totally fine so fully now that we feel nothing anyways, just because we are attending to other things. But the unconscious only does things to protect us from emotional experience. The unconscious doesn't protect us from physical experience. Why is it operating differently than ever before here? I think you know the answer. It isn't. One last curious bit of logical strangeness. In this theory, you have a mind-body process that works on the principle that a physical symptom comes in to distract from an emotional issue, but then, at the instant of recovery, it reverses polarity completely and does the exact opposite. It continues supporting a distraction that now takes away symptoms to make sure you don't feel them. Tell me, when in life have you seen such a complete turnaround in anyone or anything? Lastly, we can even see the science that points to the reality of real physiological changes that come with changed beliefs, rather than changed beliefs not altering physiology at all. On top of the strange consideration that changed beliefs somehow don't change physiology, we are now pairing this absurdity with another one. That there is also a sudden new adaptation of distraction coming in at just the same inflection point without any explanation that fits with the science. If you look at brain scans, there is always so much going on in your brain, with things changing all the time. Can you imagine the strange discipline it would take to keep this distraction alive in the same state for no real reason? Regardless, the great thing about science is that it is true whether you think so or not, and it is observable. We see the mind-body process leading to actual changes in physiology all the time. In studies, in the information of the placebo effect, and in everyday life such as with crying and blushing. This doubt argument goes against the science too, because it suggests that the changed physiology is still happening, but is showing no effect because of distraction. This is not how the body works. It responds to our state of mind all the time and does so instantly. It doesn't stay frozen in a bad place while the mind whips up a distraction that somehow undoes the effect of the physiology. You can't unblush just because you're distracted. We are moment-to-moment beings, but now we want to suggest that some people got better, and an unknown distraction becomes very permanent. How likely is that? Compare this with the mind-body theory, which makes only one assumption, that you and your symptoms always make sense. This theory doesn't change any of the rules midstream. This theory has a specific reason that makes sense as a motivation and fits with what we know of psychology. This theory fits with all of the science and follows the same logic throughout the process, instead of doing a 180 in the middle for no apparent reason. And as always, it all runs together without any randomness, convergent evidence from all sides, and no other assumptions are made. It fits with everything we know about ourselves, whereas the other is just a really nifty sounding doubt that ends up being a house of cards on examination. I really hope you enjoyed this episode on getting better, being the real deal, and not just a distraction. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.